Welcome back to Two Gals in a Glass Half Full. So we all know movement, working out, they're both really great things. But what if you're not getting the results that you want? In this episode, Cheryl, Dr. Jess, and I are going to tell you some things that might help make it a little bit better for you, a little bit easier, a little less painful, and you can actually get the results that you want to see. But before we get started, Dr. Jess, what is in your glass?
Well, I've got my smoothie. I'm halfway through it this morning, so I'm still working on trying to get the rest of it in me so that I'm fueled for the day. Some good dark fruits, homemade cashew milk, protein powder, chia seed, flaxseed, and microgreens. I think I put a little bit of vitamins in there too. All sorts of just throw it in, mix it up, we're ready to go. So Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
So I really wanted to go down and get kombucha because my water is like almost done, but my daughter is awake and she's like on that verge of being sleepy. And if she sees me, she'll just start screaming. So I'm still on my water that is almost done.
Nice. And with us today, we have a special guest. Her name is Cheryl. Before we do introductions, because I'm super interested in her training and perspective on things. But first, Cheryl, what's in your glass?
Well, I'm pretty early in the morning for me, so I've got coffee going on. I've also got a little bit of water, magnesium supplements in the water, and a little bit of vitamin D drops. But that's what my morning kickoff is.
Yeah, I like it. And
Us northern cold weather people need that extra vitamin D because we're not like Dr. Jess in the South and get the nice ray of sunshine all the time.
Yeah, I do feel I feel very lucky. It's beautiful weather here right now. So in the heat of the summer, y'all can look at me and say how great it is up north. But I'm gonna live it up right now. Yeah. So as far as training and stuff, so Cheryl, tell us a little bit about you and like that specificity of training that you've gone through.
Yeah, so I call myself a functional movement specialist. I've brought a few things together. So I'm a guild certified Feldenkrais practitioner. It's a learning method that uses movement as the means to do learning and improve brain function. I'm also trained as an integral master coach. So it's a school in Canada that looks at whole person development, including the body or somatics. And then I also, in the middle of that, fell into something called being in movement. So it was someone who, Dr. Paul Linden, who put together what he observed from Aikido and what he observed from Feldenkrais. And he put together this method to really do movement experiments with people to bring them back to their resources. So I kind of bring that whole kind of compilation together to be able to kind of meet my clients where they are, work with them on their functional movement goals. But, when people say, so you just work with the body, it's like, it's the whole person in every movement and every kind of movement habit. So that's what I do.
I love that. And
I
what got you
love,
interested? Like that's
yeah.
just so like what started that path?
Well, I mean, I was working in education, adult education, and I was kind of the weird kid that was always asking questions like, okay, this is great, but like when does the body get involved in learning? When do we apply learning? Like, I have a master's in education, but I just knew I couldn't take a next step to go into PhD theoretical work. I had to go into applied work. And so, I was working, overseeing applied research in an intercultural education unit in a 2-year college. We really looked at how do you connect across similarities and differences. But it was a lot of sort of head and heart kind of training. And, when we saw some political shifts, both in the US and in Canada, it was a very diverse college, and all of a sudden people were having fistfights in the halls, right? Like the differences became polarizing. And I kind of went like, we've missed the body, right? People are clicking over and they're just, reacting to things. I need to, this is fine. This is good work, but it's clear it's not durable. and it doesn't last past a certain kind of, confrontation. And so that kind of set me, on a path, but I've arrived here. And so really get to, for me, the part that was always important to education, that we build people's capacities and their resourcefulness and their resilience to be able to meet what the world brings and what they want to do, like to step into challenges, even if they've been knocked down, and maybe especially if they've been knocked down by something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you talk about functional movement because, like, a lot, and when we say functional movement, what we're talking about is movements that you're going to do in your everyday life when you're going to clean, when you're picking up your children, when you're driving, when you're lifting boxes. It's the activities that you're doing day in and day out. Whereas, like, when we go to a gym, we might be doing, like, I think a good example is like a bicep curl. If you're just standing there with one weight, bicep curling like this, you're working one single muscle. In reality, at what point in your life are you sitting there repetitively doing that with the rest of your body just standing still?
Right.
That's not a very functional movement. In rehab, sometimes we need to do those movements to get started to strengthen a specific muscle. But overall health and well-being, we need to look, as you said, at the whole body.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
when we're started, how would you describe self-organization? Like, what is it? And why do your clients like come to you for that?
Yeah. So, I mean, a great observation, in my Feldenkrais training, Feldenkrais said gravity is the earliest, most impactful force on us for our lifetime, right? Like if we were born in space, different kind of question, right? Or even in the ocean, there'd be a different nature of force, but we're literally born into gravity. And so how we learn to organize, when you watch the trajectory of a baby, they, on their back, they gradually trial and error, then they learn to roll over, they learn to lift their head, all of the steps, crawling, they start to walk. Once we start to learn to organize ourselves in the field of gravity upright, I mean, we've got these little feet, given how tall we all are, that we're negotiating this incredibly complex kind of way to walk through our lives on these incredibly small feet, given our size. You look at any four-legged animal, like they've got 4 points of support. It's a much more stable base. So we learn to do that well enough, to walk, to do stairs. The first time you learn to ride a bicycle, right? Like this incredible, like, oh, getting balance to be on those thin wheels, and then we find it, right, and we can go forward. What I work with people is how to really up level, optimize how they organize themselves to do things. um, Generally when I see people, after 40, before 40, we can kind of get away with a lot. We can do how we do, and it's good enough. If you're into sports or something that asks more of performance, you might have to work on how you do that and how you're organizing, how everything works. What I find is after 40, people start to pay a higher price for habits that it gets it done, but the price goes up, right? We don't just renew and heal and recover in a night's sleep or a couple days off. And so, I'll work with them to really explore to find that together. So I'm not necessarily saying this is the right organization for you. It has to be something that they sense. So like riding a bicycle, once you hit that balance and you're not like wobbling like a crazy person, trying to find it, where that is. You've got that kind of equanimity that says, okay, now I can ride a bicycle, right? And then you might challenge that on off-road or up hills or mountain, you might change the environments. So I take people to really find the organization that really serves them in the context of what it is that they want to do. So it could be, worked with someone after a hip replacement and they wanted to come back to a certain kind of mobility, but the habits they had of walking literally led to the wearing out of their hip joint. So we had to refine ways to do things like getting up from sitting. How do I walk initially with canes and then without, so that I'm not kind of just recreating the drama that led to, right, the outcome that they didn't want, which was the hip replacement.
I think what to me it sounds like is you're getting down to the causative effects. So I always try and tell people arthritis doesn't just strike you from above on one side, right? It doesn't work like that. Like one knee is really bad. Like, oh, it's just because I'm old. Well, your left knee is just as old as your right knee. So we can take that one off the table. Now, what else? What if we consider biomechanical chains and how we're loading stressors throughout our body? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I step my foot onto the ground, there's an equal and opposite reaction that comes up. I have to absorb that, right? So I have to disperse that load absorption, and I have to do it ideally as equally as possible, so that way I don't overload any one area. So how do you do that? That is the dance. That's the
Yeah.
dance, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah, totally.
beautiful, right? Movement is beautiful. The sequencing that has to happen to coordinate like transfers, and I just think sit to stand. Think about everything that has to happen to get that, essentially your center of mass is seated and it needs to be in front of that and higher in order to stand, right?
Yeah.
All of the sequencing and all of the motor units that have to fire to get you to get that center of mass to come up to where you want it to be without going too far, too forward, being forward bent, all of that. And that's just a simple transfer. Now think walking, running, stairs, picking up things, getting into sports, swinging something in the hand. I mean, it's so cool when you think about it.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, I'm so happy to be in the presence of like movement geeks because, like I say to people, like I go to farmers market and I watch people for their movement strategies. And it's sort of like, it's not in a creepy way. It's professional. I'm
Right.
here as a professional, but to just see all of the different ways they manage holding the heavy bag, pulling the cart, like, walking with their kid beside them. And then there are, to see all of the ways they're trying to accomplish their movements, and then to look for like, what's one thing that's, it's like they're putting on their own emergency brake, right? That they're going, but you can see a thing that's getting in their way that afterwards they might go, oh, geez, like, I'm really sore. I guess the bag was heavy, but it had a lot to do with what they were doing with their pelvis and their hips. And
100%.
so it is a piece that, unless we really attend to this for some, compelling reason, sport, dance is often one, musicians attend to how they move. We kind of get good enough, and then we wonder why it hurts when we do some things, right?
Well, my favorite will be kind of when I'm working with patients, especially when it comes to like back or shoulder, and let's say they were in some sort of accident, whether it's a car accident, this or that. They'll be like, well, and like they'll say there's like arthritis, like they'll do imaging and but then they're like, well, it didn't hurt before. And I'm like, well, just because it didn't hurt before didn't mean there weren't compensations before. Now you've had this accident that has created some trauma and some acute inflammation and things. And so it woke it up. And it's like, hey, I'm here. And it's going to take a little bit and you got to take a little work and we're going to have to change some things, but you'll be better. But it's like telling them it may not have bothered you before, but it doesn't mean you weren't doing it before.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of part of what I mean. Like when things happen, unfortunate things, like the cost goes up, and all of a sudden it's more visible, it's more tangible. But the roots were happening maybe for years before, and then the event happened and now it's turned up, turned up all the way. Yeah.
And I think we can see that a lot with like when we're talking about working out, and let's talk about lifting weights and things like that. Yeah, you might be able to do the 10 pounds, but all of a sudden you're starting to increase to 20, 30, 50, 100, and all of a sudden now it's hurting you. Well, it may be not that it's too heavy, it may be that your body is not positioned correctly, or as you say, organized yourself correctly to be able to lift that heavier weight. And we kind of need to back it back down to reteach our body mechanics and how to function properly, and kind of retrain that nervous system, how it should properly lift things up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I often lean into with people is, and what you just talked about, I completely agree with, like how is it we're doing that biomechanically? The layer I would add is in relation to my environment, like when I think about, talking with a client, reviewing, they're planning to do a whole bunch of hiking on their vacation, and it's sort of like, what's the terrain like? What shoes are you taking? Like, talk to me, are you bringing poles? Like, talk to me about the environment in which you're going to do your movement, so we can, as you say, preempt some things, give some options about, because they have a history of plantar fasciitis. And so to sort of say, okay, let's talk through what that environment is going to be like, including duration. Like, do you see yourself doing 1 hour walks, 3 hour walks, like, so that you've got some maintenance options in the middle of that can help you refine an organization if you start to get tired. I had the experience of this. I love to kayak, and I have a friend who's quite a good excursion paddler on Vancouver Island. And we ended up doing a 30-kilometer paddle one day, which are, sorry, for miles, that's some maybe like over 20, over maybe 24 miles. Yeah, way longer than we had anticipated. But in the middle of it, I had to tell me how to paddle again. I've lost my self-organization. I was in a rented kayak. It didn't quite fit. There was a few things going on. And so, to reconsolidate, okay, this is the way this works. And I know how to feel that. I know, intellectually about it, but I can create the motor plan that then gets me back into more of that sweet spot of moving in the way that I can do it for another 3 hours, because that's how far we are from where we put in. So yeah, it's a dynamic thing rather than a sort of, this is the perfect way and you have to conform to that. It's I think so many of my clients want to know, am I doing this right, meaning perfectly, meaning I can forget about it after this. And it's much more body mind engaging to have a self-organization that serves you every day.
Yeah, I resonate with this a lot, especially as a runner, and I work a lot with runners. And I tell them, I'm like, listen, like, I mess up just as much as anybody else, but I have a method that I've put this in place because of injuries. Okay, so right, I'm gonna learn the hard way. I'm gonna drop it on my foot a number of times before I realize maybe set it down, right? So is what it is. I'll be honest about it. So, but what I've learned is that with any type of movement pattern that you're doing for an extended period of time, I don't care who you are, you have to check in with yourself. So what are my tendencies? I need to know what my tendencies are, and then I need to have constant check-ins on those tendencies. So as a runner, how's my foot strike feeling? Do I feel my hip engaging? How's my posture? Am I breathing through my diaphragm? How's my arm swing doing? Am I overswinging? Am I underswinging? Am I going side to side instead of really, rotating so that I'm going forward? So, with any runner I'm working with, there's always going to be like probably 3 to 5 key items that I'm like, you can't check in with them all at the same time. Doesn't work. That's frustrating. You're just going to be overwhelmed. So this whole we can multitask, right? No, we're attending to one task and then we're switching to another one, and we're doing that back and forth, but oftentimes we're not completing said task. So complete said task, check in with one thing, and pick your duration. You have to have a duration of time too, any goal setting, right? So up until that mailbox, I'm going to check in on this. Then up until that mailbox, I'm going to check in on this. And then just because you checked in at mile 1, if you're running 20 miles, you better be checking in
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
road, right? So set your timer, whatever it might be, and you will notice like, oh, I don't feel my right glute, I feel my left. Let me work on my stride on that right leg. Oh, there it is. I found that muscle again. So it's like that's just how it goes. Like nobody's gonna operate. We're not machines. We don't just push start and go. Like we're way more like, we have too much finesse. So
Yeah. No, totally. And it's, yeah, I love that example. And especially long distance running, you got all the time in the world as you're running to sort of check in and see what's going on. I'm preparing for my black belt test in Aikido, and it's a whole exercise and sort of being pushed past your personal stamina limit to see what's really in there. And absolutely, like knowing the personality, like one of the characteristics of my self-organization, I'm very right side dominant, right eye, right hand, right glute, right, like everything. So I kind of have a different personality on the left side. Aikido, you do everything both sides. So I have to constantly negotiate. When I'm on the left side, there's a certain organization that comes on, and on the right side, it's different. And I was really perplexed in my early years of training to understand why I could do something really well on the right side, and then we'd go to do on the left, and I had to relearn it. Like and it made no sense at the time. And then once I started my work with Feldenkrais, I was like, oh, I literally, the way the motor plan's integrated has a different personality because of all the choices I make about doing it on the right side. So I do work on divvying up work, like small things, doing dishes, like changing how I do things so that I'm growing more of that mind body connection, just to be a little more, I won't be symmetrical in my lifetime probably, but to also really say when I'm really struggling, we've been going hard, for an hour and I've got 20 more minutes to go in the training session, I know what messages I have to send left and right, right? Because they're different. And that gets me through, that kind of stamina kind of workouts, where right now I'm in they're pressure testing everything up until the test. So I leave training exhausted, sweaty, you know, and then, get up and do it again the next day. So
It's so true about our, one side of our body. We have a preference, and I always ask people when I'm doing therapy to, just so I have an idea, and I just naturally ask them, which hand do you write with? And if you were to kick a ball, which leg would you kick the ball with? Because whatever leg we kick the ball, that's going to be our preference most of the time, or the
yeah.
stronger leg a lot of times. And so when I learned spinal manipulation, or like cracking neck, body, things like that, you have to use both hands. Well, my right hand was excellent. It was quick. It got it. It could do it. This left hand over here was like, and it was so frustrating because I could feel it. My right side could feel what's supposed to happen. I could see what's supposed to happen. I know it. And I just couldn't get my left arm to like cooperate with the rest of my body. And it took a lot of practice with that left arm to kind of get it. And to this day, I still can feel a difference. I still feel smoother, better, stronger with my right hand than I am my left. But kind of it does take a lot of conscious effort to improve that other side.
So when we're talking about like right and left and dominance and how we have one that's stronger than the other. So Cheryl, can you speak to kind of what is that neural connection, right? So like how does that actually work? Because physically they look the same, right?
Yeah.
But like they operate different. Why?
Yeah. So, and again, like this is like taking a very complicated subject and sort of making it palatable for people. But
Right.
I'm always looking at that challenge and saying, I'm in. So a couple things I would sort of say, all of the information, all of our sensory, information from the external world, but also inside of us. So, that might be qualities of emotions. It could be like what's going on in your digestion system and feeling that. All of that comes up and informs the brain about like what's safe. That's the predominant concern of the brain, is to keep us safe and to create, sort of predictive maps of, as it learns and accumulates all of these, thousands and thousands of points of sensory and other information, to say, okay, so this is the way we're going to organize this movement. Watching a baby start to learn to hold a cup, right? The sippy cups were the biggest, benefit, because there's a neurological learning pattern to being able to hold a cup, bring it up without spilling it or without having other spontaneous movement. That's that motor plan getting developed, right in front of your eyes. The 100 times they tip it over and, and spill it. And so as we do that process, once we have some maps, like, this is the thing about aging, it's not that we can't continue to do that process, but we do tend to rely on the maps that we have, unless there's some kind of information that tells us, oh, I really need to pay attention to this and do something different. A lot of the work that I do is really having people experience novel movement pathways, so that what our habits are in walking. I may not have them do walking for a lesson that's devoted to walking. I'm going to take a real slice of something and kind of interrupt the usual programming, right? Having them attend to what they can sense, because literally that act of paying attention with a kind of quality that is real attention. Like, we're in the, I'm talking to you, but I'm on my phone. Like, it's not that kind of attention. It's like, I'm really paying attention. That literally builds the chemical pathways, eventually the structural neurological pathways, to strengthen those options for movement. The biggest thing I find with people as we age, we get into our habits, we do our habits, they work well enough, but the other options get pruned. We have this great plastic brain, but every night there's kind of little chemical sweepers that go through and prune out anything that really didn't get used. So we can totally recreate that, but we tend to solidify into the things that we do, which is why learning sometimes feels more difficult as we get older. Kids, they're sort of in this neuroplastic viable range, like, and they also, like, if you watch a child, like if you're sitting and waiting for a bus, the child is in at least 15 different positions while waiting for the bus, whereas like the adult maybe has two. They cross their legs or they put them down. So like, they're keeping it alive because they're wiggling, right? They're moving. And so if we wiggled as adults, like I often send my clients home with wiggle homework, to sort of say, like, here's the kind of things you need to like feed back in, so you've got that biological diversity of options to move, because it's our birthright, and throughout our whole lives to create that. We just have to feed the inputs, and novelty and curiosity is a key. If we're not intrigued by it, interested in it, then it's not going to happen.
I just recently, as you're saying, kids, and as, we build those patterns, I just recently saw something on research that said most of your children's habits that will be brought into adulthood are grilled into them by the age of 5 or 6. So, for example, brushing teeth, hygiene, behavior, things like that, which is crazy to think, like 5 or 6, that's so young, but those habits that you instill in them then are what they're going to resort to as an adult.
Yeah, and that's the plasticity of the brain, right? It's like, we don't really truly fully understand the brain currently, right? But we do know that under the age of 6, that brain is just like, woof. I mean, neurons are just going nutso. And so when we underestimate children, it's like, no. They are so much more capable than what we realize. But it doesn't mean that we put these like, like, hey kid, like, you're capable of 15 pounds. No, right? But expecting a kid to be able to motor plan with you is acceptable. That's very acceptable. And just because they don't get it right the first time and they get frustrated and want to quit, well, that happens to adults too, right? So like, but all of that like repetition of everything we do it so much with behavior and teeth brushing, things like that, things where we're giving some sort of verbal command, typically is honestly how it works. Dictator style rule. I'm in control, you're a child. I have opinions about that, but anyway, but when it comes to motor learning, if we could, as adults, think about motor learning as we do a child, and that when that child was picking up that cup and it spilled, we knew it was going to spill. We were expecting it to spill. And like the kid typically is like, I'm going to try again, right? Like they don't just like give up and walk away and say, this doesn't work for me. It was the first time they were doing it. But as adults, we have this expectation that we're going to master something. Like the first time we do it, and the minute that like we struggle a little bit, we're like, oh, that doesn't work for me. That's the whole point. The point is that you struggled, right?
Yeah.
If you mastered it, it was the wrong thing to give you. You're not going to disrupt. So a disrupt means you got to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, and it's one of the things like when I teach group classes, and so as well, and so walking them through, say it is looking at walking as the function, and we'll be doing something that inevitably across a series, I will have probably 2 to 3 moments at least that none of my learners can do, like it's, and it is very much confronting that struggle and staying with it does the neurological work to create the possibility in the function. They may or may not, like I've picked up the challenge sometimes when I've hit that, I've gone back and worked over time and built the capacity to move in a way that was in no way possible the first 3 times I did it. But I don't say to them, you have to go back and master this way of moving your leg under your arm with the thing. But to say, when you attempt that, and we come back to this function of walking, notice how now your pelvis works this way with your legs. Notice how, there's an uprightness that you don't have to make happen, it happens. So it's setting them in those novel environments, enough challenge, sometimes, fail, like enough challenge they'll fail, but it really gets their system to go, we got to build more connections, build more muscle fibers. Like it creates a demand that requires something of their system. And generally our bodies say, okay, great. Let's do it. Let's build it.
Yeah. I love that. So what are some ways that so let's say somebody's like, listen, I don't have a functional movement specialist close to me. Money, time, blah, 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 barriers, right? Always in our life. So let's say I'm already strengthening, I'm already doing something. What are ways that I can think about, this like, movement learning, functional movement into like life?
Yeah, so like, I tend to work in a principle fashion. And so, if I see somebody for one time, it's like I'm going to send them away with a principle that they'll take for life. So, one that's really helpful is counterbalance. And you were talking about sit to stand, this idea like if the project is I'm sitting and I need to get up to standing, for some people, depending on injuries, or if they have age and not, they don't have the strength to do that reliably or safely. And so I would walk them through a basis of big head, big pelvis, they both weigh a lot, right? Connected by a spine. So what might we do to, in opposition, as you come forward to get up, your head goes forward, your pelvis has to go backward, right? Like there has to be this balance. And, some details about having your knees come towards your hips rather than away over your toes, but just so you're allowing this kind of biomechanical unfolding that makes use of this counterbalance. I would use a similar principle to help sometimes people come to be, I'm afraid of falling on the floor, I'm not sure I can get up. And so again, taking this principle through, here's strategies to, go from standing to the floor and back again, that of course they require muscular strength. Of course you're using all of your strength, but it's a way to really focus on certain aspects of self-organization that just make it easier to lift the weight of yourself. So, that's the sort of thing that, I would give to, I have a YouTube channel. I do a lot of little movement explorations, um, which are coming from real life clients or real life situations. But they're, to me, it's like, go play with this, see what you notice for yourself, so that if you are a do-it-yourselfer, you can then, follow these explorations, notice what feels lighter, notice what just seems easier. We kind of sometimes accept, the idea that we have to work hard. And it's like, notice if this is like pleasurable movement. Notice if that actually feels fun or kind of tasty to do, rather than like super hard work to go from sitting to standing. Then that's a sign of your body working all together to create that sense. I do believe that, like when you look at figure skaters, dancers, incredible amount of work to get there, but they also have connected with this organization level. Like it must be pure joy to, do some of the things they do, because of how well they do it, how organized, how integrated they are.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I 100% get that. It's like working smarter, not harder. When, just running as an example, when you are working harder as a runner, everything just feels like it isn't fun. When you fall into that, when they say runner's high, typically what that means is like you've warmed up your body enough that you really aren't working harder. You're not, this sheer ground reaction force that's happening, that every time you're striking the ground, you've got this reaction that's going this way, but you're trying to go that way, right? We're actually striking the ground and our reaction force is pushing us forward, right? So like, then you're like, oh, this is enjoyable, right? You're like, yeah. So everything changes. The perspective completely changes, but it does require you to have an understanding of where's my body in space, right? And like that disconnect is what I see all the time in the clinic, all the time, huge disconnect. And I think that's what leads to a lot of dysfunctional movement patterns, which leads to pain. And how do we treat pain? We medicate it, we inject it, we cut it. But really, if we get to the source, those are all just treating the symptom. It's not getting to the source of the movement impairment itself that created the breakdown. So if it does get to a surgical experience, let's say it got that far, but you still don't come back and fix that, something else is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what it blows my mind that more healthcare providers don't think like that. It happened because of something. Unless a car hit you and broke your bone, okay, like, I mean, a true acute injury, it's 9 times out of 10 pain is related to a movement impairment. And addressing the movement impairments and the pain, yeah, like we address pain, right? But doing both is like how you can really get full resolution of something or prevent it, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's ideally prevent it altogether. Like, I mean, you're like, man, you're drinking the Kool-Aid I'm drinking. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
It is so good.
I love preventative. I think there's so much that can be done preventatively to help us not even experience the pain. We're all going to have soreness, muscle soreness, things like that. But if we can prevent the back pain, if we can prevent the knee arthritis, and there's so much out there that can support that it can be done. You just got to be willing to work on it to make the changes. And those changes are not only physical, those changes are physical, mental, nutrition, sleep, to allow your body to repair itself, to allow your body to have the nutrition to repair itself. It's kind of that whole, as you were speaking before, it's that whole body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, connecting all the pieces. Like it's vital. And I do think that the vast majority of people that are active and working out you're in the right direction. Like you're there, like you're trying to learn a foreign language. You want to speak Spanish, but you're learning French. It's a foreign language. So you're in the right area, but you're not going to speak Spanish by learning French. It's not going to happen, right? And so we're being active in order to, protect our bodies and stay strong and keep our heart strong. And you're doing the right thing. It's just, if you just switch it a bit and add functional movement, like now, like the world just explodes with all of the benefits because you do the heart rate exercise, do all of that, obviously, yes. But if you're strength training and you're just doing single movement patterns, it just isn't going to be as proactive. You're not going to see the same results as if you do combination movement patterns where your brain has really have to control where's my hip, where's my knee, where's my core, where's my shoulder. Heaven forbid I consider my neck, right? Like know where my neck is. Yes. Like, is it doing something funky? Like nice and tall. Where's my diaphragm? Maybe I even consider breathing at the same time. Whoa, nervous system. It is on fire when you're exercising and you're getting your muscles stronger. I mean, like mind blown. So many benefits. I mean, you're just checking so many boxes at that point. I mean, it's like, obviously I love this stuff. It is like my jam. I really love it. My patients are always like, does that mean I have to do burpees next? I'm like, yeah, I love burpees. Right? I mean, think about it. You got a little kiddo. We're picking up a BOSU. What does your kid want to do? Right? And then you want to get on the floor, stabilize that core, know where you are in space. Don't let the back arch. Where is my body? Where is it? So talk to it. I know I talk to plants too. I'm just that person. It's okay. I think. I tell people as long as you don't hear me arguing, we're fine.
Great. Yeah,
right?
totally.
So Cheryl, as far as learning more about you, your channel, like all this other like greatness that you're talking about, like how do people find you?
Yeah, so good place to start. My website, peaceandpower.ca. I chose a Canadian bit for that. We've got our classes, how to book with me one-on-one. But I would also say look for Peace and Power movement services on YouTube. Growing number of videos and audience there. You can search for things about, how do I walk without pain on my Disney vacation, right? Like, I get all sorts of, functional movement questions. Like, I'm not really interested in being active, but I'm going with my family and I want to not die. Oh, okay. That's a functional movement goal. We can make that happen. So yeah, check those out. I've got, a quiz on my site, sort of looking at movement habits at midlife and sort of seeing what's happening now and what are you doing? What are some suggestions for things for the next 10 years? Because it's really, for me, important when I see people coming in to midlife, I see the decisions happening. People that choose sedentary, that the pain stops them. They don't, like I see this aging trajectory split happening right in front of me. So it's reversible. There are always things you can do at every age that change what that health span outcome can look like. So definitely check that out.
Yeah. And we'll put all that in the comments in the episode description. So links, all sorts of great stuff. Cause like I'm telling you, everybody, like she's talking some great stuff. Like, I mean, it's I can't speak enough about this. Like the brain and body connection is vitally important. I mean, it's so important. And your life really is way more fun. It's way more fun if like you can connect the two, because it's just more enjoyable. That run turns into like, oh my gosh, I love this, versus like, this is a slog, I just want it to be over. Like life does not, you don't want to just get life over with. You want to enjoy it every day. You want to wake up and say, yes, I get to insert blank. Like it doesn't matter what it is, but you get to do it. I mean, come on, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'll drink to that. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. There's my smoothie. So if anybody resonated with this, like, subscribe, this is the kind of Kool-Aid we're all drinking. Drink it with us and pass on this episode to somebody, share it. If you're thinking of someone in your life that's like, you know what, like they would really love this, share this episode. Don't just keep it for you. Tell the world, like, this stuff is so cool. I mean, get to be a movement nerd like us. I'm telling you, it's like I've helped so many patients really learn how to like enjoy movement, because it doesn't, like, we don't just get it over with. We don't just go to the gym just because like we have to. Like the world is huge. So, and it looks different for everybody, and there's not one way to do things. So know that, believe it, and start changing one small thing at a time. And like it is way more fun that way. So stay tuned for next week. Always something fun going on. We'll talk to somebody pretty cool, and hopefully you'll take away a little tidbit. Bye, everybody.